Looking back at the past decade or so, the Golden State Warriors make a strong case as the best team in the NBA. 4 championships in 8 seasons is wild. But there are some not so impressive seasons in the mix, and the standout has to be the 2019-20 season. Yes, it was during the COVID era, but it seemed that the Dubs caught COVID on the court. The Warriors went from a championship contender to fighting just to stay relevant. So, how bad were they actually? The fact that Steph Curry, the team's main man, only played 5 games all season still doesn't sound right. D'Angelo Russell? Bro was seriously the team's leader in points per game? And Clay, unfortunately, we know that story all too well by now. The point is, it was a season to forget. They went from their usual championship shenanigans and ended up as the worst team as they suddenly found themselves in uncharted territory. They swapped out their usual championship dreams for a crash course in player development and a whole lot of losses. We'll get to that in a bit. But first, entering the 2019-20 season, the Warriors were fresh off their 5th straight finals appearance and a tough finals loss to the Raptors. So they decided to shake things up. They ditched their old stomping ground at Oracle Arena and moved to the shiny new Chase Center in San Francisco. Their problems actually started in that heartbreaking loss in the 2019 finals to the Raptors, where KD went down with an injury and Clay tore his ACL in Game 6. The Warriors were already on shaky grounds. Then KD decided to pack his bags and head to Brooklyn, leaving the Dubs scrambling to salvage the roster. It was clear that the Dubs were losing it from the start. Now, with KD gone and Iguodala out of the picture, the Warriors were banking on D'Angelo Russell to fill the void. Not to take anything away from Russell, but aside from his 2019 season with Brooklyn, he wasn't exactly the kind of player the Warriors fans were wishing for. But hey, they at least had Steph Curry, right?
It's not the collision, it's the landing, and then...
No. Steph, the heart and soul of the team, went down with a broken hand in a collision during a home game against the Suns. With Steph also out, the Warriors lost their identity completely. At this point, it was about avoiding total embarrassment. They were stumbling, trying to find their footing, but the hits just kept on coming. I mean, these guys were the kings of the Western Conference, but you wouldn't know it from the way they started off. In their first 6 games of the season, the Dubs went 1-5 and were shooting the 6th worst percentage in the entire NBA. To put that into perspective, they were 3rd in the previous season. When it came to 3-point shooting, they were pretty meh, but not the absolute worst. Their assists per game, though, showed some promise, landing them at a respectable 7th in the league. Surprisingly, despite their youth and inexperience, they were keeping turnovers in check, sitting comfortably within the top 10. Actually, their assist-to-turnover ratio of 1.65 was 3rd in the league. Not too shabby amidst a sea of not-so-great stats. No one really expected much from their shooting, considering that their best shooter Steph and second-best shooter Clay were out. Now, on to the defensive end, where things get grim. The Warriors were basically letting opponents shoot lights out against them. But considering they lost defensive stalwarts like Iguodala, KD, and Clay to various circumstances, it's not entirely unexpected. No one was expecting this squad to lock down like they used to with those defensive aces in the lineup. And the outcome? 16 losses in their first 20 games. You'd have to rewind the clock all the way back to the days of dial-up internet to find the last time they were this abysmal. We're talking about 2000 and 1998. Back then, it was all about Latrell Sprewell dunking it out with the coach, and PJ Carlesimo got the boot after leading the team to a dismal 6-21 start. For the 2020 Warriors, their 33rd loss of the season to the Mavericks marked the end of an era. It was the first time since 2013 that they had 0 chance of hitting the 50-win mark. And let's not forget that brutal 10-game losing streak from December to January. We're talking about a drought so long, you'd have to go back to 2002 to find the last time they suffered that many losses in a row. Their 42nd loss to the Heat sealed the deal. It was their first losing season since 2012, and just to rub salt in the wound, their March 10th loss to the Clippers meant they missed the playoffs for the first time since 2012. 5 consecutive finals appearances, and suddenly they were out of the picture. They finished on a 15-50 record, their first 50-loss season since Steph's rookie year, and also finished with the worst defense with a defensive rating of 113. Ouch! And if that wasn't enough, COVID-19 decided to crash the party. The season got suspended in March after Rudy Gobert's positive test, and when the league announced its restart plans, the Warriors found themselves on the outside looking in. It was a bitter pill to swallow, marking the first time in franchise history that they ended the season with the worst record in the league. Going back to the glory days of 2014-15, the Warriors were the kings of the court, blowing teams away with their run-and-gun style, raining down three-pointers like it was nobody's business. But the league underwent a major makeover, and the competition was tougher than ever, and no one feared them again. Okay, Steph and Clay being out might have probably made the Dubs less threatening. And losing Kevin Durant was a gut punch. I mean, we're talking about an NBA talent and MVP caliber player. And who do they replace him with? D'Angelo Russell. No offense to D'Lo, but he's no KD. And he wouldn't even finish the season with the Dubs. Remember the death lineup? KD, Steph, Clay, Iggy, and Draymond Green. It was all a distant memory. Now, don't get me wrong, Green is a solid player, but he's never been the guy you build a team around. And suddenly, he was their best hope. He didn't exactly prove he could be an all-star level player without the big talent next to him. Draymond missed a chunk of games due to various injuries, but that didn't stop him from racking up a league-high 14 technical fouls. I mean, just Draymond Green being Draymond Green, a hothead more times than being the main man. But during the absence of Steph and Clay, there were some bright spots in the Warriors' otherwise gloomy 2019-20 season. Despite all the setbacks and injuries, they revealed some real gems in the form of Eric Paschall, Damian Lee, and Marquise Chris. The Warriors got Paschall in a steal of a deal with the Atlanta Hawks in the second round, and he made the most of his time. Averaging 35 points, 20 rebounds, and 12 assists over 60 games, Paschall made his mark on the court, shooting nearly 80% overall. And he was only 23 years old. Plus, in the last 6 games of the season, he stepped up his playmaking game, dishing out an average of 20 as... Alright, fine. That's enough trolling. But seriously, Paschall was literally the superstar in the Bay for a hot minute. Even Coach Steve Kerr couldn't contain his excitement. He praised Paschall's physical strength, power, and confidence, highlighting his ability to hold his own in playoff caliber games. At the trade deadline, the Warriors made some big moves, sending D'Angelo Russell, Jacob Evans, and Omari Spellman packing to the Minnesota Timberwolves. In return, they snagged Andrew Wiggins, a top 3 protected first-round pick, and a second-round pick. It was a bold move, shaking up the roster in hopes of finding some fresh talent. While no one really cared about what the Warriors were doing at the time, the Wiggins trade was obviously a huge one. While Wiggins hasn't been that guy the past couple of seasons, man, I gotta tell ya, Wiggins was the spark plug to the Warriors' 2022 title. Meanwhile, Steph made a brief comeback on March 5th, but it was short-lived. The season got suspended due to the pandemic, and to add insult to injury, the Warriors didn't make the cut for the NBA bubble on June 4th. And just like that, their season came to a disappointing end with a league-worst record and landed them dead last in the Western Conference. It was a tough pill to swallow for the Warriors and their fans. But maybe 5 straight NBA Finals appearances took a toll on the Warriors. I mean, they played 105 playoff games in that span. That's more than 5,000 minutes minus overtime, and even though they are professionals, it's exhausting to say the least, and it showed with the constant injuries to key players. And it resulted in the Warriors turning from being a powerhouse to a punching bag. It was a bit of a mixed bag for the Warriors. On one hand, they faced the daunting task of rebuilding without some of their star players like Steph, Clay, and KD. But on the other hand, it gave them the opportunity to focus on developing their young talent and exploring new avenues for success. The Warriors embraced this opportunity to rebuild, giving valuable minutes to young players like Jordan Poole, who really stepped up to the plate. Andrew Wiggins, and snagged a potential valuable first-round pick from the Timberwolves in the process. But those positives are rather a small part of the whole season that the entire players and fans of Golden State would forget in a hurry. The early exit from the season gave them a lot of time to focus on planning their offseason and the new season, and plenty of time to forget the previous one. Hey, it wasn't all that bad now, was it? The Dubs won the title 2 years later. Still, the 2020 Warriors are on the worst forgotten teams in recent history.